Welcome to the special Good Friday stream. I mean, Good Friday special. The stream is basically a normal Q&A. Our first question for today is from Glenn Lawrence, who asks, what is your opinion on how feminism is impacting the modern church? And I definitely have some opinions on this. I think it's actually a very deeply concerning impact, but we have to start by defining feminism. This is actually a really big deal. I actually posted on Twitter, and you guys can go to my Twitter if you want to. It's Mike Winger II. That's my at Mike Winger II Twitter thing. And you can see all the responses. I said, hey, how do you define feminism? And what's interesting is in all these responses, almost nobody actually defines feminism, but they do describe how they think it's affecting the world or themselves in both positive and negative ways. So let me just start by saying this. I'm not on the fence on the topic, but I want to avoid confusion on the topic. There was a college professor who, or maybe a high school professor, I had a student come and tell me, I don't remember whether they were in high school or college, that the teacher, I think it was high school. Yeah. I think it was Downey High School. Anyways, I could be wrong. This is a while back. The teacher says to the students, raise your hand if you're a feminist. And the students kind of scattered. Some raised their hands, some didn't. And then the teacher said, hey, raise your hand if you think that women should have equal pay for equal work as men do. And everybody raised their hand. And then the teacher turns to them and says, you're all feminists. So the teacher here, in this case, defines feminism as women should have equal pay for equal work. Important that we had that qualifier there. And like in that case, I'm a feminist. You're a feminist. We're all feminists. Of course, that's not feminism, though. That's not what feminism actually is, but it's what it is to somebody. And so when I talk about the harmful effects of feminism on the church, here we are, question one. There's our counter going up. Someone could think I'm talking about how women shouldn't get equal pay for equal work. It's like, oh, that's confusion. Someone else said they loved feminism because it allowed them to go to a university and get a career and have a career. And I thought, okay, so they see feminism is the thing that opens the doors for opportunities for me to pursue a career I want. And there may be an impact that's related to feminism there, but that's not what feminism actually is, certainly in the modern sense. So there's been, if you count them, there's been approximately 4 waves of feminism, and we're going to talk about how this affects a biblical worldview in a second. I'm not going to give you a whole overview of all feminism, just briefly here, right? The first wave of feminism ended about 1920-ish, and it ends with suffrage, the right to vote. And then you have the second wave of feminism that hits in the 50s to the 70s approximately, and then you have, now there's other issues that are being considered, right? It's not just, in fact, some of the second wave feminists, the original first wave feminists would argue with each other probably and disagree on what their actual principles and beliefs and standards are. Then you have third wave, which extends feminism, quote, beyond, and who am I quoting? Just someone who was talking about feminism, beyond white middle-class American women's concerns. And now you have, in my opinion, where feminism starts incorporating intersectionality and critical theory and that sort of thing. And this is where it starts turning into something, or it starts revealing that it's something different than what a lot of people think when they say, I'm a feminist. Then there's fourth wave feminism, which literally right now, it is a genuine live debate in feminism. What is a woman in the first place? Should we say that a woman is, associated with biological gender, or should we just say it's purely a social construct? I read an article in prep for this question from Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. Okay, this is a very prestigious, very well-respected source. And in it, they go through feminism's definition of a woman and how it's just a live debate. We're not really sure exactly how we define it in the feminist movement at this point. And this is because old feminists and new feminists aren't in agreement exactly. And new feminists, it seems, are the ones winning out, it seems to me. And that is a problem. So let me tell you first the good of feminism, and then we'll talk about a lot of bad. Good of feminism is it may open doors of opportunity, right? It may actually open good, healthy doors of opportunity for women where they might have had barriers put up artificially, keeping them from doing things. Doesn't mean that every opportunity is a good opportunity for a woman. It doesn't mean that. It does mean that this is a good benefit. I think this is a positive thing. Another positive thing with feminism is the highlight of the suffering of women under abuse. that's a good thing. Okay, this is something I care a lot about as a guy who spent many years as a domestic violence counselor, and I know that women are disproportionately affected by that. They're the victims of that far more often than men are, and usually worse. Not always. There's men who are total victims of domestic violence, domestic abuse, but more often it's women. And feminism helps, right? It assists in highlighting the issues of women suffering. It's in the workplace or in the home and things like that. And I think that that's a good thing. But it also turns into like the I believe her movement, where you uncritically believe any accusation made as long as a woman makes it. Okay, that's not a positive thing, right? This is an overreaction. So that's feminism. These are positive things, but are they the core of feminism? No. Feminism does encourage fair treatment of women. Some would say actually unfair treatment at this stage, the current stage of feminism. But as far as it encourages fair treatment, I think that that's a good thing. And it also encourages men to feel like they should treat women with integrity. Although I would argue that an old school Christian complementarian view of men and women, it encourages the same things. But then you guys can check out my Women in Ministry series to see as I build the case going through all the scriptures and all this stuff to talk about that sort of thing. So that's the good. Let's talk then about the bad, because there's more bad than good. I'm sorry to say at the moment, my estimation, but here's the reasons why. These are like metrics you can count on. Okay. Feminism is very much about abortion, very, very much about abortion. Nowadays, if you call yourself a feminist, but you're not pro-choice, you are probably going to be told you're not really a feminist, right? That this is considered a women's rights issue to kill your own child. Okay. This is a human life that you've conceived. It's not your body, it's your baby, right? But you don't have right of life over someone else's life, in this case, your offspring, any more than a mother has the right to strangle her baby in the crib. That would be murder, and so it's the same thing here. But feminism, the belief of feminism, whatever's driving it, whatever the core is, however you want to define it, it is entirely, inextricably linked to pro-choice, pro-abortion movements. That is entirely the case. I don't know of any good evidence that there's any significant pushback within the feminist movement on that issue. If it's there, I'd like to see it. I've never seen it personally, and I think most of you probably haven't either. Marriage, on feminism, modern feminism, marriage is an oppressive structure to women. I say that because I mean biblical marriage. I mean God's view of marriage. Okay, as I've gone through the Women in Ministry series, and you guys can check that out. I'll link it down below since I'm mentioning it now. It's a massive series ongoing. I got 2 more videos to do in it. But that series has revealed very much so that marriage is something that God orchestrates, he institutes, and he does have role differences for men and women in marriage. Feminism is inevitably, current modern feminism, totally opposed to a biblical view of what marriage is. That is, they see the male role as oppressor. Like when I say male role, I mean that biblical role that God gives to males, to men in the marriage, that is not meant to be oppressive, not meant to be cruel, that is meant to be self-sacrificial and loving, but is in a leadership role in the marriage. That role is inherently oppressive because it's seen as having some kind of more authority than the wife. So then that's inherently oppressive. Then the woman's role, where she's told by Paul, like, hey, yield to your husband, submit, that this is something that God's calling you to do, not to abuse, no, to his godly leadership. This is something that's seen as inherently oppressed. And so the biblical idea of marriage is reframed as oppressor and oppressed. And this is, I don't know how to stress how important this is. I don't think it's a gospel issue. I don't think you're unsaved if you don't get it right. That's not what I'm saying. But it's so important because it affects your marriage. And let me just put it this way. You guys that are married, how important is your marriage? Really, really important. It's of prime importance. It's of immeasurable importance. And feminism undermines the nature of the relationship in marriage. So feminism is also part of what's given rise to the egalitarian movement, which I will say now that I've gone this far in my series, which is not a biblical thing. And it is ultimately, as many as there's godly, otherwise godly, well-intentioned, Christ-loving believers in the egalitarian movement, I think that they're fundamentally undermining marriage in its roles, not in its existence, but in its roles, and affecting God's plan for the church. So that's obviously a big deal. That comes with the rise of egalitarianism. Seems to rise with feminism. Not that they're they're the same thing, but they definitely, feminism has had an impact in the church in this way, I believe. The issue of modesty is affected by feminism. Modern feminism sees modesty as oppression. It's fine if you want to wear something that's modest, but if society is trying to tell you that you're supposed to not show that much cleavage or something, then that is inherently oppressive on the part of society. So modesty, which is seen, modesty not only in, because biblically modesty is not just about showing less skin, it's also, that is part of it, but it's also about not showing off wealth, not trying to display really expensive things in your hair, in your jewelry, that sort of thing. So it's in your clothing, like wearing like a $5,000 suit. That's immodest in a biblical sense. And so it's all of those things. But feminism would be opposed to all of that idea of modesty that we see in Scripture. In feminism, it seems women are to view their sexuality, their self-determinism as empowerment rather than a stewardship. God sees it as a stewardship, something that you want to honor the Lord with. Feminism seems to see it as a power or a liberty to be flexed so that you can have some sort of fullness of personhood, something like that. So yeah, that's kind of messed up. So modesty, marriage, family, also selfish pursuits are encouraged on feminism. This is a side effect of feminism. I don't think it's the core of the issue, but it's a side effect is that pursuing a self-fulfilling life that's often measured by your career, your sense of personal empowerment, that becomes too central in a person's life. And I think this is bad for men or women. Okay, so sometimes feminists would view men as pursuing these sort of great things like career and stuff like that, and then women as sort of being kept in their place. And then liberating women is, of course, letting them pursue those things as well. But I don't think that we should view any of these things this way. I don't think men pursuing a career is the great thing that I think the great thing they do is fatherhood and being a husband, and a career is how you put food on the table. It's not how you find your self-identity and make your mark in life. Unless, of course, you're pursuing a career that serves others, in which case it has nothing to do with how high up in the company you get. It has to do with the benefit and blessings you bring to others. In other words, effectively ministry. Now, you can have a job outside the church, but you're serving others, you're blessing them, and that's different. But personal pursuits of like raising up in the ranks and stuff like that seems to be promoted too much in feminism. But then there's the current feminism, third wave or fourth wave feminism, some would call it. I don't want to argue about the waves. Let's just say this: current modern day feminism, on a scholastic level, you may not think of it this way because you're just thinking feminism is like kind of however my gut feels about it. But on a scholastic level, there's people who are writing feminist stuff. Like there's a feminist hermeneutic. There's those who approach the Bible with feminism in mind, principles in mind that are actually unbiblical in some cases. And then they read the Bible that way, and it distorts the Scripture. Then this leads to other things like liberation theology, which sounds nice, but has major issues. That's like the scholastic side of feminism affecting the study of Scripture, but it also, on the scholastic side of feminism, is connected to something called critical theory. Critical theory, you've probably heard of critical race theory. This idea of putting people into classes of oppressor and oppressed, but it goes much farther than that. Feminism is linked at the roots, at the core, to critical theory in its different branches. So that means that feminists nowadays are becoming opposed to what they call heteronormativity, opposed to old school gender ideology, and they want modern gender ideology. So then they're supporting homosexual acts and lifestyles and the approval and endorsing of homosexual relationships. Feminism is also endorsing trans identities and all sorts of things in that area. So this is, to me, a lot of red flags. Feminism, it might mean something good to you personally, or you may find one of the side effects beneficial in your life of feminism. Oh, here's a good piece of it that helped me. Like if it wasn't for the advances of feminism, nobody would have listened to me when I cried I was being abused, and they listened and I was helped. And then that's like, yay, that's good. But you can also recognize that, like, let me give you a really extreme example. let's say you're driving down the street and you get a flat tire and you're stranded and you're worried you're going to die of exposure in the middle of wherever, desert or something. And some guy comes and he helps you. He takes his own spare tire. He replaces your tire. He gets it all set up and he sends you on your way. And you think, that's a great guy. He totally impacted my life in a huge, helpful way. Later, you find out his name is Jack the Ripper. And you go, wait a minute. But he was good to me. He was so nice to me. Oh, how do I reconcile this with how evil he is? You don't. You just go, hey, here is a nice benefit, but at the core, there are things that are overarching, too problematic for any Christian to embrace. That's modern feminism. And you're welcome to dig it up more on your own. That's just some of my thoughts on this. I think that everything I've shared is things that I could get into them in more detail. It gives you a background, a beginning look, at least at how I would say in these measurable ways, marriage, family, the downplaying, the considering of the female role as inherently oppressive. This is why a lot of you women feel embarrassed when they find out you don't have an outside job, you work at the home and you take care of your kids, and you feel embarrassed because they've downplayed your role as though you're being oppressed. That's horrific to me. And those types of things, selfish pursuits being encouraged, and then trans ideology and heteronormativity being a bad thing, all these types of things are now part of feminism. Deeply concerned about that.